The crystalline spires of Alderaan's grand citadel shimmered with protective enchantments as another world died in the distance. Through the observatory's massive windows, Archmage Lyra watched the familiar horror unfold. First came the darkness, deeper than the void of space itself, then the slow consumption of everything it touched. The planet's twin moons crumbled like sandcastles caught in an invisible tide. "We've lost Meridian," Elder Thane announced, his ancient voice cracking. The other council members bowed their heads in shared grief. It was the fourth world this month. Lyra's fingers curled into fists, her silver-threaded robes still smoking from her latest attempt to fight back. She'd led a team of battle mages to Meridian's surface, trying to establish a containment field. The void play had swept through their defenses like they were nothing more than children's drawings in the sand. "That's 3 billion souls," she said, her voice sharp enough to make the other mages look up. 3 billion more added to our failure." Elder Moira raised a withered hand. "Child, we understand your pain, but—" "No," Lyra cut her off, something no junior mage had done in the Council's 1,000-year history. "We don't have time for another lecture about patience and propriety. The plague is learning, adapting. Each world it devours makes it stronger." She gestured to the windows, where the remnants of Meridian were still dissolving into cosmic dust. "Our strongest spells, our most ancient rituals. Nothing works. We need something different, something the plague has never encountered." "Mind your tone, young one," Elder Thane warned, but Lyra was already moving. Her boots clicked against the marble floor as she strode toward the sealed doors of the Forbidden Archives. "Stop her," someone shouted, but Lyra had spent months preparing for this moment. She pulled a crystal from her sleeve, one she'd enchanted in secret, and crushed it in her palm. The security wards around the archive shimmered and fell. "This is treason." Elder Moira's voice shook with rage, but Lyra could hear the fear beneath it. They all knew what lay within those archives. Knowledge too dangerous to keep, too valuable to destroy. Magic crackled through the air as the other mages prepared to subdue her, but Lyra was faster. She slipped through the doors and sealed them behind her with a spell of her own creation. It wouldn't hold them for long, but she only needed a few minutes. The archives were a maze of floating shelves and glowing texts, but Lyra knew exactly what she was looking for. She'd seen it once, during her apprenticeship, when Elder Thane had accidentally left his personal journals unlocked. A reference to a realm so distant, so fundamentally different from their own, that it existed outside the known magical spheres. She found the ritual text hidden behind a false shelf, bound in leather that felt wrong against her skin. The pages were filled with warnings, all variations on the same theme. The beings from this realm, this earth, were dangerous not for their magic, but for their complete lack of it. They had built wonders without spells, reshaped worlds without enchantments, and some claimed they had even killed their own gods. A tremendous crash shook the archives. The council was breaking through. Lyra tore the relevant pages from the book and pressed them to her chest just as the doors exploded inward. The council members poured through, hands raised, spells ready. "Wait." Lyra held up the pages. "Look outside. Really look." Despite their anger, they turned. Beyond the observatory windows, the darkness where Meridian had been was already spreading, reaching for the next world in its path. "We've tried everything else," Lyra said softly. "Everything we know. Maybe it's time we tried something we don't understand. Something even the Void Plague has never seen before." The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of reality tearing itself apart. Finally, Elder Thane lowered his hands. "Show us," he whispered. "Show us this ritual." The ritual chamber hummed with power as 12 grand archmages channeled their energy into the ancient spell matrix. Lyra stood at its center, her voice raw from hours of incantation. The forbidden pages trembled in her hands as reality itself began to bend. "Something's wrong," Elder Moira called out. "The power requirements. They're beyond anything we've ever attempted." Lyra's arms shook as she held the final stance. Sweat dripped from her brow, sizzling into steam before it hit the ground. We can't stop now. The ritual will kill us all if we break the circle. The chamber's crystalline walls groaned under the magical pressure. Cracks appeared in the ancient stone floor, leaking light from somewhere else. Somewhere impossible. Then the screaming started. Not from the mages, but from the tear in reality itself. It was the sound of physics breaking, of natural laws being rewritten. The tear widened, showing glimpses of another world. Glass towers touching the sky, metal birds soaring through clouds, streams of light carrying information across vast distances. Earth. 4 figures tumbled through the portal, landing hard on the ritual chamber floor. The tear sealed itself with a thunderclap that shattered every window in the citadel. What the actual hell? One of the humans pushed herself up, her white lab coat stained with coffee from whatever she'd been doing before the summoning. I was literally in the middle of a CDC briefing. Hostiles. Another figure rolled to his feet with military precision, hands instinctively reaching for a weapon that had been left behind on Earth. Captain James Rodriguez, U.S. Army Rangers, took in the scene with trained eyes. Doc, behind me. Dr. Emma Blackwood ignored him, already pulling a small device from her pocket and pointing it at the nearest mage. These readings can't be right. The background radiation levels are impossible. The third figure adjusted his crooked glasses, seemingly more fascinated than afraid. Actually, Emma, I don't think we're dealing with standard physics anymore. Dr. Marcus Webb pulled out a notebook, scribbling calculations. The energy signature reminds me of my quantum tunneling experiments, but on a macro scale. The fourth human hadn't moved or spoken. Engineer Maya Patil simply stared at the arcane technology surrounding them, her eyes wide with something between horror and delight. She reached out to touch a floating crystal, only to snatch her hand back when it pulsed with light. "Welcome, champions of Earth," Elder Thane began, but was cut off by a bone-rattling explosion from above. The ceiling crystals flashed red, a warning system Lyra had installed after Meridian. "The Void Plague," she gasped. "It's here." Through the broken windows, they could see it, darkness flowing like liquid night, consuming the nearest moon. The humans watched in stunned silence as an entire celestial body vanished into nothingness. "That's not possible," Dr. Webb whispered, but his hands were already moving, sketching diagrams. "Unless... Maya, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" The engineer nodded slowly. "The wave function. It's like it's collapsing reality itself. But that would mean less theorizing, more surviving." Rodriguez had found a fallen piece of masonry, holding it like a weapon. "We need cover, defensible positions, and an explanation, in that order." Dr. Blackwood was already moving, pulling instruments from her lab coat's seemingly endless pockets. "The spread pattern, it's behaving like a virus, but on a quantum level. I've never seen anything like it." Lyra stepped forward, her legs shaking from ritual exhaustion. "Please, we summoned you because our magic can't stop it. Countless lives were lost. We thought Earth's champions would be great warriors or better." Rodriguez interrupted, a grim smile crossing his face. "You got scientists. Now someone tell me what we're dealing with. And make it quick. That thing up there isn't stopping for a tactical briefing." The humans exchanged looks, years of training and expertise passing between them in seconds. They had no weapons, no preparation, and no idea where they were. They got to work anyway. "You want me to do what?" Dr. Emma Blackwood stared at the ornate containment vessel the mages had brought her, its crystalline walls supposedly designed to hold a sample of the Void Plague. "Just a small sample," Lyra insisted, her hands still glowing from the protection spells she'd cast around the laboratory. Once a sacred meditation chamber, now cluttered with improvised scientific equipment. "The wards will hold it." "Yeah, about those wards." Emma pulled out her modified Geiger counter, its display flickering wildly. "They're degrading faster than you think." Marcus, What's the decay rate? Dr. Webb looked up from his workspace, where he transformed a collection of magical crystals into something resembling a particle detector. Exponential. Whatever this thing is, it's learning to break down magical barriers. Maya Patel hadn't slept in 36 hours, her workbench covered in dismantled magical artifacts. The crystal's atomic structure is unlike anything on Earth. They shouldn't even be stable, but somehow. She jerked back as a spark of energy crackled between components. Careful. Elder Thane moved to stop her, but Captain Rodriguez stepped between them. Sir, he said, with the practiced patience of someone used to dealing with nervous civilians, I suggest letting the engineer work. Unless you want to explain why your unbreakable containment fields keep failing. The argument was interrupted by a scream. Everyone turned to see Emma collapsed against a wall, her protective wards flickering out. A tendril of darkness writhed in the containment vessel near her workstation. Rodriguez moved first, grabbing her arm and pulling her back. Webb. Need containment options. Working on it. Marcus grabbed a handful of crystals, quickly arranging them in a pattern he calculated. Maya, remember that quantum frequency you found? The engineer was already moving, connecting cables between her jury-rigged devices, channeling it now. A beam of pure white light shot from their makeshift apparatus, forcing the escaped tendril back into its container. But something was different this time. The darkness seemed to recoil not from the magical energy, but from the focused wavelength itself. Emma coughed, already reaching for her tablet. Did anyone else see that? The plague didn't fight back. It physically couldn't affect the beam. The mages stared in confusion as the humans burst into excited scientific jargon. The quantum resonance. If we calibrate for that specific frequency. Like a virus hitting an immune response. Stop. Elder Moira's voice cracked like thunder. This is blasphemy. You're destroying sacred artifacts, defiling ancient chambers. Getting results. Rodriguez cut in. He pointed to the contained sample, still recoiling from Maya's device. First time anything's actually heard it, by my count. Emma was already reviewing her data. It's not magic at all. The void plague is a form of self-replicating dark matter, breaking down normal matter to reproduce. Your spells only slowed it because magical energy interferes with its quantum structure. She turned to the bewildered mages. You've been fighting a disease with light shows. Impossible. Elder Thane whispered. All our traditions, our understanding of reality itself, could use an update. Maya finished, not looking up from her work. Now, are you going to help us rebuild this containment field with proper quantum shielding, or should we wait for another world to die while you check your ancient scrolls? The chamber fell silent except for the hum of hybrid tech magic machinery. Finally, Lyra stepped forward, rolling up her sleeves. Tell me what you need. Over the next few hours, the laboratory transformed. Magical artifacts were repurposed into scientific instruments. Ancient scrolls became notepads for calculations. The humans worked with desperate efficiency, knowing every second brought the plague closer to their position. I still don't understand, an apprentice mage whispered, watching Emma calibrate another sensor. How can you do so much without any magic at all? Emma smiled grimly, remembering every impossible problem she'd faced in her career. That's humanity's real power. We don't need magic. We have science, determination, and really good coffee. She paused. Speaking of which, please tell me this realm has caffeine. It's evolving. Emma's voice cut through the tense silence of their makeshift command center. Dozens of crystal displays showed the plague's advance across the system, each one darker than the last. Every world it consumes adds to its complexity. Look at these patterns. Captain Rodriguez leaned over the tactical display Maya had rigged from enchanted mirrors. Those movements, they're not random anymore. It's using actual military strategies, like it's learning from every civilization it destroys. Not just learning, Marcus added, his glasses reflecting cascading data streams. It's absorbing their knowledge. Their technology. Their magic. He pointed to a fresh readout. The quantum signature is getting more complex by the hour. Maya hadn't moved from her workstation in days, surrounded by a maze of hybrid tech she'd created by fusing Earth science with magical artifacts. The good news is, I've got our first prototype ready. The bad news. She gestured to the power calculations floating above her head. We've got enough juice for one shot. Then we make it count. Rodriguez pulled up the tactical display, his military training merging with newfound magical awareness. Lyra, your barrier teams here and here. Emma's containment fields along these vectors. Marcus, how long to calibrate the quantum resonance? With conventional equipment, months. With these crystals, Marcus grinned. 20 minutes, assuming they don't explode. A commotion at the chamber entrance interrupted their planning. Elder Thane burst in, his robes singed. The outer worlds have gone dark. All of them. The plague. It's coming. The humans exchanged glances, years of crisis management experience passing between them in seconds. Maya, get that prototype ready. Rodriguez's voice shifted to command mode. Emma, we need those containment calculations now. Marcus, already on it. The physicist was elbow-deep in crystal matrices, rerouting magical energies through scientific principles that made the mages wince. Lyra watched in amazement as the humans moved with practiced precision. No spells, no enchantments, just pure efficiency born from countless earthly disasters. How can you be so calm? This entity has devoured entire magical civilizations. Emma looked up from her work, dark circles under her eyes. Because on Earth. This is Tuesday. We've faced plagues, disasters, wars. We've even survived our own stupidity. Humanity's greatest strength isn't magic. She pointed to her head. It's this. Adaptation. Innovation. The ability to look at impossible odds and say, watch me. The chamber shook. Through the windows, they could see the darkness approaching, stronger than ever. It's beautiful, in a terrifying way, Marcus muttered, making final adjustments. The perfect predator, evolving with each victory. On Earth, we'd be writing papers about this. Write them after we kill it, Rodriguez said. He turned to Maya. How's our chance looking? The engineer's hands flew over her hybrid console. The quantum resonance is stable, but these power readings. She shook her head. Even with every magical crystal in the Citadel, we're still short. What about the mages themselves? Emma's question made the room go silent. Their bodies channel magical energy naturally. If they volunteered, it would kill them, Lyra whispered. No. Rodriguez's voice was firm. We don't sacrifice allies. There's always another way. He stared at the tactical display, years of combat experience searching for alternatives. The plague adapts to everything it faces, right? So what if we give it something it can't adapt to? Something totally unpredictable. Maya's eyes widened. Human consciousness. Our quantum states are naturally unpredictable. It's why magical mental manipulation never works quite right on us. Her fingers flew over the controls. If we route the targeting system through a human mind, it would be like trying to predict chaos theory in real time. Marcus finished. Even the plague couldn't calculate fast enough. I'll do it, Rodriguez said, already moving toward the prototype. James, wait. Emma started. No time to argue, Doc. He managed a grim smile. Besides, unpredictability is what Rangers do best. The darkness reached the Citadel's outer barriers. Reality itself began to scream. Now or never, people, Rodriguez called. Let's show this thing how Earth handles an apocalypse. Maya's hybrid device hummed to life, channeling power that shouldn't have existed in the same reality as magic. Captain Rodriguez stood at its center, neural interfaces glowing against his temples. Everything was ready. Everything was perfect. Then it all went wrong. The first warning came as a fluctuation in the quantum field. Marcus saw it coming a split second too late. Maya, the resonance is. The explosion ripped through the chamber's defenses like they were tissue paper. The device screamed, magical crystals shattering in cascading waves of destruction. Rodriguez's body arched as feedback surged through the neural link, his scream mixing with the sound of reality tearing apart. James. Emma rushed forward, but the failing containment field held her back. Through the chaos, they saw darkness seeping through the chamber walls. The void plague had breached the Citadel's outer defenses. "Get them to the holding cells." Elder Mora's voice cracked with fury and fear. "Before they kill us all." Guards materialized from hidden passages, their spelled weapons trained on the Earth team. Maya struggled as they pulled her from her workstation. "Wait." The readings. Something happened. "Enough." Elder Thane's magic crackled. "Your science has failed. The ancient ways were right. Bringing you here was a mistake." They were marched through crystalline corridors, past windows showing the advancing darkness. Other mages pressed against far walls, watching with a mixture of fear and vindication as Earth's champions were led away in magical chains. The holding cells were carved from pure nullstone, designed to dampen both magic and technology. As the guards sealed them in, Emma pressed against the transparent barrier. "Lyra, the plague's behavior during the explosion, didn't you see it?" But the young archmage turned away, her faith in Earth's science visibly shaken. Hours passed. Through their cell's small window, they'd watched the darkness claim another section of the Citadel. Marcus hadn't stopped working, using his finger to write equations in the dust on the floor. "Got it," he suddenly exclaimed. "Maya, remember the quantum fluctuation right before the explosion?" The engineer looked up from where she'd been examining their cell's construction. "The one that shouldn't have been possible." "Yeah, what about it?" "It wasn't an error." Marcus's eyes gleamed with the fever of discovery. The plague reacted before the device failed. It showed weakness. Emma moved to his equations, following the logic. Her eyes widened. The neural interface. "James, what exactly did you see in that moment?" Rodriguez sat in the corner, still recovering from the feedback. Darkness. Pattern. But for a split second, it felt afraid. "That's it." Maya jumped up. "It wasn't a failure. We just overloaded the connection." The plague felt human consciousness for the first time, and tried to reject it. A sound at the cell entrance made them turn. Lyra stood there, watching. "Even in failure, you keep working." Her voice was quiet. "Keep trying to understand. That's what humans do." Emma pressed her hands against the barrier. "We fail. We learn. We try again. Every treatment I've developed started with failures. Every battle plan." She nodded to Rodriguez. "Every engineering breakthrough, every physics theorem. They all came from getting it wrong first. But the cost." Lyra gestured to the destruction visible through their window. "Is high," Rodriguez agreed, standing despite his pain. "But giving up costs more. We can't stop the plague by playing it safe. It adapts too fast. We need to be willing to fail spectacularly to find its weakness." Maya stepped forward. "Those readings weren't the setback. They were data. Now we know the plague can't handle human consciousness. We just need to find a way to survive the connection." Lyra stared at them for a long moment. Outside, alarms began to sound as another section of the Citadel fell. Finally, she raised her hand. The cell barrier shimmered and vanished. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me how to learn from failure." Marcus gathered his equations. Emma checked Rodriguez's neural burns. Maya cracked her knuckles. Time for attempt number 2. The restricted archives had become a war room. Ancient scrolls shared space, with hastily drawn circuit diagrams, and crystalline computers display both magical runes and quantum calculations. Maya stood at the center of the chaos, connecting the last crystal to their rebuilt device. "This is either brilliant or insane," she muttered, making a final adjustment. "Probably both." "Story of my career," Emma replied, checking Rodriguez's neural implants. The captain sat quietly, letting her work while he studied tactical displays. The darkness had claimed half the citadel now, but it was moving slower, more cautiously, after their first attempt. Marcus burst through the doors, his arms full of ancient texts. Lyra followed, her traditional robes now adorned with earth tech. "We found it." He slammed a book down, sending papers flying. "The origin of the void plague." Emma leaned over the text. "These markings, they're not magical at all. They're equations." "Exactly." Marcus pointed to a series of symbols. "This civilization, the predecessors, they weren't using magic. They were manipulating dark matter at the quantum level. What looked like spells to later civilizations was actually highly advanced physics." Rodriguez stood, ignoring Emma's protests. "You're saying they created the plague?" "As a weapon," Lyra confirmed, her voice grim. "They thought they could control it, use it to consume enemy worlds, and harvest their energy. But it evolved beyond their ability to contain." "Classic humanity move, just on a bigger scale," Maya commented, not looking up from her work. "Create something we can't control, then leave it for someone else to clean up." A distant explosion rocked the archives. Through the windows, they could see darkness probing the inner barriers. "How does this help us?" Rodriguez asked, studying the ancient text with tactical eyes. "Because now we know it's not magic we're fighting, it's code." Maya's fingers flew across her hybrid interface. The predecessors wrote quantum algorithms into the fabric of reality. The plague isn't eating worlds, it's executing a program. "And like any program," Marcus grinned, "it can be hacked," Maya finished. "But we need processing power beyond anything that's ever existed. The neural interface alone would need me." Rodriguez stepped forward. "Multiple minds means multiple points of failure. One consciousness, fully committed." "James, no." Emma grabbed his arm. "The feedback nearly killed you last time. A full interface would give us a chance." He cut her off. "This thing thinks like a computer, but I think like a human. Unpredictable. Adaptive." "There's more," Lyra said quietly. She pulled out another text, this one heavily encrypted. "The predecessors didn't just die. When they lost control of the plague, they tried to merge with it, become one with their creation. The results were messy," Maya guessed. "Were transformative," Lyra corrected. "They became something else. Neither plague nor human. The texts say they transcended, but lost their humanity in the process." Silence fell over the archives. Outside, the darkness pressed closer. "Well," Rodriguez finally said, "good thing I'm pretty attached to my humanity." He turned to Maya. "How long to prep the interface?" 20 minutes. "But James," she met his eyes, "there's no coming back from this. Best case scenario, you'll be changed forever. Worst case is we all die anyway." He checked his neural implants. "Emma, I need you monitoring my vitals. Marcus, calculate the quantum frequencies. Maya, make sure this thing doesn't fry my brain too badly." "And me?" Lyra asked. Rodriguez smiled. "You're my magical backup. When this thing realizes what we're doing, it's going to throw everything it has at us. I need you to keep it busy." They worked with desperate efficiency, human science and alien magic finally working as one. As Maya made the final connections, Rodriguez sat in the interface chair one last time. "Got any last words of wisdom?" Emma asked, checking his links. "Yeah." He grinned as the system powered up. "Time to show this cosmic horror why you don't mess with Earth." The interface activated, and Captain James Rodriguez dove into the void. Inside the quantum realm, consciousness worked differently. Rodriguez floated in an ocean of possibility, where every thought created ripples across dimensions. The plague surrounded him. No longer darkness, but pure information given form. "That's a lot of code," he whispered, his words becoming patterns in the void. "Vital signs holding." Emma's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Neural patterns are stable, but the plague struck. Not with physical force, but with pure mathematical certainty. Reality equations bombarded Rodriguez's consciousness, trying to solve him like a problem. He laughed. The plague paused, experiencing confusion for the first time in its existence. "Sorry," Rodriguez projected, remembering his training. "Keep them off balance. Never do what they expect. It's just, you really thought humans could be reduced to math." He struck back, not with equations but with memories. His first day of basic training. The taste of his mother's cooking. The sound of rain on a tin roof. The plague recoiled, unable to process such chaotic emotional data. In the physical realm, Maya's monitors blazed with activity. It's working. The plague's trying to adapt, but it can't predict his responses. Because he's not trying to fight it directly, Marcus realized, watching the quantum readings. He's showing it something it's never seen before, genuine human experience. The plague rallied, shifting its attack. It showed Rodriguez the worlds it had consumed, the civilizations it had ended, trying to break his will with the weight of its victories. Instead, he shared his own memories of loss, the friends he'd lost in combat, the civilians he couldn't save, the weight of command decisions that haunted his dreams. Differences, he projected, we learn from our losses. Do you? The plague's next attack was desperate. It tried to merge with his consciousness, just as it had with the predecessors. Infinite knowledge offered in exchange for his humanity. Rodriguez felt the temptation, the power, the certainty. All he had to do was let go of what made him human. "James," Emma's voice cut through the void. "Your neural patterns are destabilizing. You need to pull back." "Can't." His response was strained. "Not yet. Need to show it one more thing." He opened his mind fully, not to share knowledge or power, but something the plague had never encountered in all its existence. Hope. Hope in the darkness. Determination against impossible odds. The human ability to stand up after every failure and try again. The plague's perfect patterns began to fracture. "Now, Maya," Rodriguez called through gritted teeth, "hit it with everything." In the physical world, Maya slammed her hand down on the quantum trigger. Lyra and the mages channeled every spell they had. Marcus's calculations became reality as focused beams of science and magic combined struck the plague's weakened form. Reality itself screamed. Rodriguez felt the plague trying to escape, to retreat and adapt as it always had. He forced it to stay, using his consciousness as an anchor. "Not this time," he growled. "You wanted to know what humanity is. Here's your answer." He showed it everything. Every triumph, every failure, every moment of doubt and determination. Every reason humans kept fighting even when victory seemed impossible. The plague's perfect patterns shattered. In the physical realm, Emma screamed as Rodriguez's vital signs went critical. Maya's instruments overloaded. Marcus's calculations burned themselves into the air. Then, silence. The darkness was gone. Where it had been, something new floated in the void. Fragments of the plague, transformed by contact with human consciousness into something neither plague nor program. Not destroyed, but changed. In the interface chair, Rodriguez opened his eyes. They glowed with quantum fire. "James?" Emma approached cautiously. "Are you still me?" His voice echoed strangely, as if coming from multiple dimensions at once. "Mostly. Turns out when you force an alien superweapon to understand humanity, it changes both of you." He stood shakily, supported by Lyra. Through the windows, they could see the transformed plague matter drifting harmlessly through space, its hunger for conquest replaced by something new, curiosity. "What happens now?" Maya asked, staring at her readings in disbelief. Rodriguez smiled, his eyes flickering between human and quantum. Now we teach it what humanity does best. How to build instead of destroy." 1 month after the transformation of the Void Plague, the Grand Citadel hummed with a new kind of energy. Where once pure magical crystals had floated, hybrid tech magic devices now process data across dimensions. Students in traditional robes carry tablets loaded with earth science texts, arguing quantum theory alongside ancient spells. Emma stood at the observatory window, watching the transformed plague matter weave new patterns in space. Still can't believe we're calling it quantum silk now. Better than existential horror stuff, Maya replied, not looking up from her work. She sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by magical artifacts and circuit boards. A group of young mages watched in fascination as she assembled another hybrid device. The latest readings are fascinating, Marcus added, adjusting his glasses as he studied a floating display. The silk isn't just stable, it's creating new forms of matter-energy interaction. The applications for interdimensional travel alone. Speaking of interdimensional, Emma interrupted, how's our quantum ranger doing? As if on cue, Rodriguez materialized in the center of the room, his form briefly flickering through multiple probability states before solidifying. His eyes still glowed with quantum fire, but now he could control it, switching between normal vision and what he called possibility sight. The outer regions are secure, he reported. The silk is responding to the new containment protocols. No signs of regression to its previous state, he grinned, though it did try to teach me some interesting things about 11-dimensional space. Your neural patterns are still stable? Emma asked, professional concern mixing with friendly worry. Mostly. Still getting used to experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously, but hey, beats paperwork. Lyra entered, carrying an ancient tome in one hand and a USB drive in the other. The young archmage had embraced the fusion of science and magic with passionate intensity. The council has reached a decision, she announced. The humans gathered around as she activated a holographic display, another of Maya's innovations. First, Lyra began, they've officially designated Earth as our most honored ally. The ritual that brought you here has been refined and stabilized. We can now establish permanent diplomatic relations between our realms. Diplomatic. Maya raised an eyebrow. More like technological and magical exchange, I'm guessing. Exactly. Lyra smiled. Which brings me to the second point. The Council has approved the establishment of the first Scientific Magical Institute, a place where our peoples can learn from each other, combining the best of both worlds. They're really going all in on this, aren't they? Rodriguez mused, his quantum-touched eyes seeing possibilities ripple out from this moment. You showed us something we'd forgotten, Lyra replied. That progress comes not from clinging to tradition or rushing blindly forward, but from finding the bridge between the two. She paused. We'd like you all to help leave the Institute, if you're willing to stay. The humans exchanged looks. Earth seemed very far away now, and here they could help shape something entirely new. Well, Emma said slowly, the CDC did say they wanted me to explore alternative research directions. MIT's physics department could benefit from some interdimensional perspective, Marcus added. And Silicon Valley was getting boring anyway, Maya grinned. Rodriguez simply nodded, his quantum sight already showing him the possibilities this path would create. There's one more thing, Lyra added, almost hesitantly. We found something in the deepest archives. The ritual that brought you here, it wasn't random. The predecessors left a prophecy, though we didn't understand it until now. She revealed an ancient page covered in what looked like both equations and magical script. When darkness consumes all light, Marcus translated, seek those who make their own. The ones who build without magic, who learn without limits, who fail and rise stronger. Seek Earth. They knew, Emma whispered. They knew humanity would be needed. No, Rodriguez corrected, his quantum sight reading deeper meaning in the text. They knew humanity would be ready. That's the real legacy here, not that we were chosen, but that we chose to help. That's what humans do. Outside the window, Quantum silk wove new constellations in the void as two civilizations began the work of building something that had never existed before, a future that combined the best of both their worlds. The darkness had meant to end everything. Instead, it had brought about a new beginning. And humanity, as always, was ready to help write the next chapter.